Alright everyone, with no Premier League action and just some really boring Nations League internationals, let's take a look back at my series that I started in the summer on players who have just joined West Ham and where they have been in their careers so far. We've looked at Crescencio Somerville, Lewis Guilherme, Max Kilman, all videos that you can watch right here if you haven't already. But before that, let's take a look at our latest edition, this one on deadline day, the Spaniard who chose the claret and blue side of East London over the sparkling city of Paris. This player is Carlos Soler, so let's have a look at his career so far on today's episode of Let's Get Into It. The Spanish midfielder was born on the 2nd of January 1997, where he played football from a very, very young age. But actually, at the beginning, it took a little bit of convincing from Carlos Soler's grandfather, so he can have a little bit of the credit to the player that Carlos is today. The story goes that Soler's older brother was playing for local team Bon Repos, and by the age of 4, Carlos was taking shots at half-time, really developing a love for football, even though he didn't even have a team yet. And these little shots at half-time actually caught the eye of the club. Carlos Soler, at the age of 4, was taking very, very powerful shots, and the club were very impressed. They wanted him to join them, but initially he was quite shy and didn't really know how to go about it. But his grandfather had an idea to persuade him. And it included none other than a Nintendo Game Boy. Yes, that is right. Carlos Soler, the player that he is today, played for his first club by being bribed by a Game Boy. Mental. He ended up playing there for 4 years between 2001 and 2005, really levelling up his game. But all jokes aside, by the age of 8 in 2005, he joined his boyhood club, the La Liga side Valencia, and was working his way up the ranks in the academy over there. Things started up front for Carlos Soler, wanted to be a striker, wanted to score the goals as most kids do, but as his career went on he dropped back to attacking midfield and finally central midfield, where he still is to this day. And that was on the pitch, but actually off the pitch something else was happening as well. He started his degree in sports journalism, which he actually didn't finish, but he started it because he developed his love for the English football and English language by watching the Premier League on Canal Plus over in Spain. And that was off the pitch, but now coming back onto the pitch, Soler had been working his way up in the academy for around 10 years, and in 2015, at 18 years old, he was playing in the reserves in the Segunda Division B. Carlos Soler made his debut away at Cornella in his first match. He then scored his first goal for the reserve team in that December in a 2-2 draw away at Badalona. And these games were clearly doing something, as in 2016 he was called up for the Spanish under-19 side, making 3 appearances, gaining all of his experience from his reserve football and putting it onto an international level. But back at Valencia in club level, he signed a brand new 2-year contract extension showing how he was going to be a proper asset for the future, and finally made his first team debut in 2016 after 11 years working his way up the club. The 19-year-old made a La Liga debut away at Real Sociedad. Unfortunately, Valencia lost 3-2, but he made his debut and it would only take a couple of months for him to score his first goal for the club. And this came in January 2017. At 20 years old, Carlos Soler had scored his first goal for the club, and it was in the famous Valencian Community Derby away at Villarreal in a 2-0 away win. Carlos Soler's low-driven shot into the bottom corner beat the goalkeeper and secured a win for Valencia. Massive for the club and massive for Carlos Soler, only 20 years old. But as most things go, with the good comes the bad, and Carlos Soler had a bit of a nightmare at home to Eibar as Valencia lost 4-0, and on the stroke of half-time he actually had a bit of a tussle in the box defending a corner, conceding a penalty and getting sent off. But don't worry too much, Soler and Valencia definitely hadn't fallen out, as he signed his brand new 3rd contract at only 21 years old in 2018, signing him up all the way up until 2021. Carlos Soler was a real asset for Valencia in the future, and one that they definitely wanted to keep, as they even added a release clause of €80 million. So thought of very, very highly at Valencia, and in the 2018-19 season was probably one of the best seasons that he ever had, and this is what he did. He made 51 appearances for Valencia, including 13 appearances in his debut European season in the UEFA Champions League and the Europa League, scoring against Young Boys and Man United, 2 very, very small clubs, scoring those goals and really making himself an important player in this Valencia team. But unfortunately for him, these goals didn't really mean anything in terms of winning any European competitions, but they did actually win one other competition, and that was the Spanish Cup, the Copa del Rey. Carlos Soler had won the Copa del Rey after beating Barcelona 2-1 in the final. Lionel Messi had been beaten by Carlos Soler as he got the assist for the winner for Valencia, and they were the Spanish Cup champions. And not to mention that this Barcelona side was the same Barcelona side in the same year of the 2018/19 season that got to the Champions League semi-final and infamously lost 4-0 at Anfield after being 3-0 up from the first leg. This win in the Copa del Rey final cannot be underestimated for Soler and his side. And the club was so impressed by this that he got another contract extension. This one for 4 years, taking things up to 2023 and adding an extra 70 million euros to his release clause, making things 150 million euros in total. A very expensive player because he was doing very good things on the pitch for the Spanish side. But leaving Valencia just for a minute, he was meant to go with Spain to the Olympics in Japan to try and win a gold medal in 2020. But unfortunately, because of COVID, it had to be put back to another year. We'll get back to that later. There was a hefty price tag and a high footballing value on the shoulders of Carlos Soler. He had built his way up all of his career to get to this moment, and now he would do something that as a child he would only have dreamt of. Scoring the first hat-trick of his career was, I guess, pretty good, but to do it in a 4-1 win over Real Madrid at home really is something else. I mean, he scored a hat-trick of penalties, to be fair, the third ever player in La Liga to do that when he did so. Unbelievable achievement, and he had done it against the Real Madrid. 15-time Champions League winning Real Madrid. He finished that 20/21 season on 12 goals, with 7 of those coming from the spot, showing how he really was a clinical goal scorer, just like he was when he was a child and had the ambitions of becoming a striker. Going back to the Olympics that is now being played in the summer of 2021, he went with the Spanish team and got all the way to the Olympic football final where they faced Brazil. Unfortunately for them, they lost 2-1 after extra time, meaning that he went home with a silver medal, but still a medal that he could add to his collection and some really good international experience with the side in the Olympics. But back at Valencia, he did a similar thing in the 21-22 season, getting 11 goals and becoming the joint top Valencia scorer alongside Gonzalo Guedes, who is now at Wolves. So both of them have ended up in the Premier League by getting 11 goals that season for Valencia each. And later on in that 21-22 season, he played in his second Copa del Rey Cup final, this time against Real Betis. He played the full 120 minutes, including extra time, and it came to a penalty shootout. He scored his penalty, but one of his teammates missed, and they lost 5-4 to Real Betis. He'd made a Copa del Rey final, he'd won a Copa del Rey final, but now, unfortunately, he'd lost one. And that cup final defeat unfortunately marked the end of his time at his boyhood club playing for Valencia. At the end of the summer 2022 transfer window on deadline day, it was time for him to pack his bags from Spain and move to France. But more specifically, the city of Paris to play for PSG. He came in for 18 million euros on a 5-year contract, immediately getting integrated into the PSG side and making his debut after only 5 days of being at the club. Making his PSG Champions League debut at home to Juventus and then also making his league debut away at Lyon. It would then take him around a month to get his first goal for the club, and this would come in the Champions League at home to Maccabi Haifa, where PSG won 7-2. Very impressively, Carlos Soler getting on the score sheet. It was proving to be a very good Champions League group stage for the Parisians, but finishing in second place on 14 points, just missing out on top spot to Benfica, who had a better goal difference. However, they had still cemented a spot in the round of 16, where they would face Bayern Munich, which they lost 3-0 on aggregate and would have had to face Man City in the next round anyway. But regardless of that, they were still cooking in Ligue 1 like they do every single season and got a 4-3 win over Troyes, with Carlos Soler getting one of the very important goals. So yeah, he scored in that game and also won a penalty which Kylian Mbappe took and scored. I'm sure Soler was thinking he was going to take it, being used to taking them for Valencia, scoring plenty of penalties for them in his time. But Kylian Mbappe would take this one, even though Soler won it. But regardless of this, Luis Enrique, who was manager of Spain at the time, was very, very impressed and called him up to the 2022 Qatar World Cup, where he made his World Cup debut in Spain's first game against Costa Rica, coming on as a second half substitute for Pedri. And everything he was touching was turning to gold. Carlos Soler scored in the 90th minute against Costa Rica.
Cheeky little Keylor Navas to start things off with. pop him in nanny.
To make it 6-0, Morata added a 7th in stoppage time, and they had won 7-0 on their opening game of the Qatar World Cup. A very, very convincing win and a very, very convincing performance, with Carlos Soler getting his first ever World Cup goal. But by the end of that group, they actually finished second, just below Japan, qualifying for the round of 16 and having to play against Morocco. 0-0 after 90 minutes, 0-0 after 120 minutes, and it was time for a penalty shootout. Spain got completely battered in this penalty shootout. Carlos Soler actually missed his penalty after scoring so many for Valencia in the past. He had it saved by Bonu, the Moroccan goalkeeper. And Spain lost 3-0 to Morocco in the shootout, and they were heading straight home from the World Cup by the round of 16. Now, this was a slight setback for Soler, going to his first World Cup, losing in the round of 16 and missing a penalty in the shootout as well. But back in France, PSG were about to do the impossible, the unthinkable. They were going to win Ligue 1 for the 10 millionth time. Which they did, and would you believe, in the 23-24 season, they did it once again, along with winning the French Cup, beating Lyon in the final. Unbelievable. PSG, what an achievement under their new manager, Luis Enrique, who did take Soler to the World Cup with Spain, left them and joined PSG. So now Soler had a bit of experience under this manager of club and country. But it was safe to say that he wasn't getting the minutes that he absolutely desired, and was definitely not getting the minutes that he got back at Valencia. So in search of minutes and wanting a change from Paris to London, Carlos Soler set his sights on the Claret and Blue West Ham United. He was unveiled last Saturday evening before the Man City game at the London Stadium, and on a straight loan deal he will be ours at least until the end of the season. We won't have an option to buy him if we do think he is really good by the end of it, but hopefully we can maybe come up with a deal with PSG to get the player if we do want to go through with it. Carlos Soler, he started his career wanting a Game Boy from his granddad, and now he's about to play in the Premier League, the biggest league in the world. That is the story of Carlos Soler so far. That's who he is, if you didn't know already. And if you did enjoy the video, please make sure to like and subscribe. It'd be greatly appreciated. And until next time, come on you Irons.